I smoothed down Alice's pink tulle dress, my heart swelling with pride as she twirled in front of the mirror. "You look like a princess, sweetheart," I said, planting a kiss on her forehead. "Mommy, when's Daddy coming home?" Alice asked, her big brown eyes full of excitement. I glanced at the clock. "Any minute now, sweetie. He promised he'd be here for your special day." As if on cue, the front door opened. "Where's my birthday girl?" Evan's voice boomed through the house. Alice squealed and ran out of the room. I followed, plastering on a smile. Things had been tense between Evan and me lately, but I was determined to make today perfect for our daughter. I found them in the living room, Evan swinging Alice in his arms. He set her down and turned to me, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Rachel, can we talk for a minute?" My stomach clenched. "Now? The guests will be here soon." "It's important," he insisted, leading me to the kitchen. I busied myself arranging cupcakes on a platter. "What is it, Evan?" He cleared his throat. I've been thinking a lot lately, about us, about our future." I froze, a cupcake halfway to the platter. "What do you mean?" "I'm not happy, Rachel. I haven't been for a while." The cupcake slipped from my fingers, landing frosting side down on the floor. "What are you saying?" Evan ran a hand through his hair. "I'm leaving you, for Brenda." The world tilted on its axis. "Brenda, your secretary?" He nodded, not meeting my eyes. "We've been seeing each other for months. I'm in love with her, Rachel." A hysterical laugh bubbled up in my throat. "In love? What about our family? What about Alice?" "I'll always be there for Alice," he said, "but I can't stay in this marriage anymore." The doorbell rang, startling us both. I could hear Alice's excited chatter as she ran to answer it. "You're telling me this now?" I hissed. "On our daughter's birthday?" Evan had the decency to look ashamed. "I'm sorry. I couldn't keep pretending anymore." I grabbed a dish towel, furiously wiping frosting from the floor. "Get out," I spat. "Go greet our guests and act like everything's fine. We'll deal with this later." He hesitated, then left the kitchen. I leaned against the counter, trying to catch my breath. How could this be happening? The next hour passed in a blur. I pasted on a smile, sang happy birthday, and watched Alice blow out her candles. All the while, my world was crumbling around me. As the last guest left, Alice tugged on my sleeve. "Mommy, can I open my presents now?" I nodded, unable to speak past the lump in my throat. We gathered in the living room, Alice's eyes wide with wonder as she tore into her gifts. Evan sat across from me, his discomfort palpable. I couldn't look at him without wanting to scream. "This one's from Grandma Mavis," Alice exclaimed, holding up an ornate music box. I stiffened. Evan's mother had never approved of me, always thinking her precious son could do better. Now it seemed she'd gotten her wish. "That's lovely, sweetheart," I managed. "Why don't you take your presents up to your room?" Once Alice was out of earshot, I turned to Evan. "How long have you been planning this?" he sighed. "Rachel, please, can't we discuss this later?" "No," I snapped. "You don't get to drop this bomb and then act like nothing's wrong. What about our vows? What about the life we built together?" Evan stood up. "I'm sorry, Rachel. I truly am. But I can't live a lie anymore." As he walked out of the room, leaving me alone with the remnants of our daughter's birthday party, one thought crystallized in my mind. I would make him regret this. No matter what it took, I would fight for my family and make Evan pay for destroying everything we had. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the photo album in my lap. The house was quiet. Alice was finally asleep after hours of tears and questions I couldn't answer. How could I explain to a 5-year-old that her daddy didn't love us anymore? My fingers traced the outline of Evan's face in our wedding photo. We looked so young, so full of hope. I remembered that day like it was yesterday. "I, Evan, take you, Rachel, to be my lawfully wedded wife," he had said, his voice strong and sure. "To have and to hold from this day forward, for better or for worse." For worse. I guess we were there now. I flipped the page, and a sob caught in my throat. There we were, standing in front of our first house. It wasn't much, a tiny starter home with peeling paint and a postage stamp yard, but it was ours. We'd spent weekends fixing it up, arguing over paint colors, and laughing as we hung crooked shelves. "We did it, Rach," Evan had said, wrapping his arms around me as we stood on the porch. Our own little piece of the American dream. The next photo made my heart ache. Me in the hospital, exhausted but radiant, holding newborn Alice. Evan beside me, looking at our daughter with such wonder and love. She's perfect, he had whispered, just like her mom. What had happened to that man? The one who promised to love me forever, who looked at our daughter like she hung the moon. A car door slammed outside, jolting me from my memories. I peered out the window to see Evan loading boxes into his SUV. Anger flared in my chest. How dare he? How dare he throw away everything we'd built? I stormed downstairs and out the front door. What do you think you're doing? I hissed, mindful of Alice sleeping upstairs. Evan startled, nearly dropping the box he was carrying. Rachel, I thought you were asleep. Clearly, I spat. So you thought you'd just sneak out in the middle of the night? He set the box down, running a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I once found endearing. I didn't want to upset Alice any more than necessary. Oh, how considerate of you, I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. And when exactly were you planning on telling her that Daddy's moving out? Evan's face crumpled. I'll talk to her tomorrow, I promise. I need some time to figure things out. Figure things out? I laughed bitterly. Let me make it simple for you, Evan. You're abandoning your family for your secretary. There's nothing to figure out. He reached for me, but I stepped back. Rachel, please. I never meant to hurt you or Alice. It's just, Brenda understands me in a way you never have. The words hit me like a physical blow. And what about our vows? What about the life we planned together? Does none of that matter anymore? Of course it matters, Evan said, his voice low. But people change, Rachel. We're not the same people we were 10 years ago. I shook my head, fighting back tears. No, you're right. The Evan I married would never do this to his family. A light flicked on upstairs and we both froze. Alice's small voice drifted down. Mommy? Daddy? Evan looked at me, panic in his eyes. I should go, he said, reaching for his car keys. No, I said, grabbing his arm. You don't get to run away from this. You're going to go up there and explain to your daughter why you're leaving. He hesitated, then nodded. As we climbed the stairs, I steeled myself for what was to come. This was just the beginning of the battle, I realized. And I would fight with everything I had to protect my daughter and the life we deserved. The shrill ring of the doorbell pierced the quiet morning. I groaned, pulling myself out of bed. It had been a week since Evan left, and I was running on fumes, trying to keep it together for Alice. I opened the door to find Mavis, Evan's mother, standing there with a pinched expression. Rachel, she said, her voice as cold as the autumn air. I think we need to talk. I stepped aside, letting her sweep past me into the house. Alice is at school, I said, following her into the living room. Mavis perched on the edge of the sofa, her back ramrod straight. I've spoken with Evan, she said without preamble. He told me everything. I felt a flare of anger. Of course he had run to his mother. And I'm sure you're thrilled, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. You never thought I was good enough for your precious son. Her eyes narrowed. Don't be dramatic, Rachel. I simply want what's best for Evan and Alice. And you think breaking up our family is what's best? I shot back. Mavis sighed, as if explaining something to a child. Sometimes marriages don't work out. It's better for Alice to have two happy parents apart than miserable ones together. I clenched my fists, fighting to keep my temper in check. We weren't miserable until your son decided to throw away his vows for some floozy at the office. Brenda is a lovely woman, Mavis said, her tone clipped. She makes Evan happy in a way you never could. The words hit me like a slap. I thought back to all the times I'd tried to win Mavis's approval. The dinner parties I'd hosted, the gifts I'd carefully chosen, the way I'd bitten my tongue when she criticized my parenting, all for nothing. I want you to know, Mavis continued, that I'll be supporting Evan in seeking joint custody of Alice. I felt the blood drain from my face. What? She stood, smoothing her impeccable skirt. It's only fair. Alice needs her father in her life. Her father walked out on us, I said, my voice shaking with rage. He doesn't get to abandon his family and then waltz back in whenever he feels like it. Mavis's eyes flashed. I won't let you use my granddaughter as a pawn in your vindictive games, Rachel. Evan is a good father, and he has rights. I stepped closer, my anger finally boiling over. Rights? What about my rights? What about Alice's right to have a stable home? Evan gave up his rights when he chose his secretary over his family. You're being hysterical, Mavis said dismissively. This is exactly why Evan needs to protect himself, and Alice, from your emotional outbursts. I saw red. "Get out," I hissed. "Get out of my house right now." Mavis raised an eyebrow. "This house belongs to Evan too, you know. You'd do well to remember that in the coming weeks." As she swept out the door, I felt a chill run down my spine. This wasn't just about Evan leaving anymore. This was war. I sank onto the couch, my mind racing. I needed a plan. I needed to protect Alice and secure our future. But how? My eyes fell on a framed photo of Evan and me from happier times. There was something in his expression, a glint in his eye that I'd missed before. Had he always been planning this? Had our entire marriage been a lie? Suddenly, I remembered something. Evan's private files, the ones he always kept locked away in his home office. If I was going to fight back, I needed ammunition. With shaking hands, I made my way to Evan's study. The lock on the file cabinet was easy enough to pick, a skill I'd learned in my Wilder college days and never thought I'd use again. As I rifled through the papers, my heart pounding, I froze. There, in black and white, was evidence of a secret bank account. An account with a balance that made my head spin. I clutched the papers to my chest, a mix of shock and determination coursing through me. Evan thought he could discard me like yesterday's trash. He and Mavis thought they could bully me into submission. Well, they were about to learn just how wrong they were. The gloves were coming off, and I was ready to fight dirty. I clutched the stack of financial documents to my chest, my mind reeling from what I'd discovered. Evan's secret bank account was just the tip of the iceberg. There were records of transactions, property deeds, and a name that kept appearing: Sunset Apartments. With shaking hands, I pulled up the address on my phone. It was only a 20-minute drive away. Before I could talk myself out of it, I was in the car, Alice safely at her afternoon playdate. The Sunset Apartments loomed before me, a sleek, modern building that screamed of luxury. My stomach churned as I parked across the street. What was I doing here? But I knew I couldn't turn back now. I approached the front desk, plastering on my best smile. "Hi, I'm here to surprise my husband. We're thinking of moving in, and he wanted to check out the place first." The receptionist beamed. "Oh, how lovely. What's the name?" "Evan Thompson," I said, the name tasting like ash in my mouth. She tapped at her computer. "Ah, yes, apartment 507. Here's a visitor pass. Enjoy your tour." My legs felt like lead as I rode the elevator to the 5th floor. This was crazy. I shouldn't be here, but I had to know. I found 507 and hesitated, my hand hovering over the doorknob. What if Evan was inside? What if Brenda was? Taking a deep breath, I tried the handle. It was unlocked. The apartment was immaculate, decorated in sleek grays and blues, Evan's favorite colors. My eyes fell on a framed photo on the coffee table. It was Evan and Brenda, arms wrapped around each other, laughing on some tropical beach. The timestamp showed it was taken 3 months ago, when Evan had told me he was on a business trip. Bile rose in my throat. I stumbled into the bedroom, where the evidence of their affair was impossible to ignore. Brenda's clothes hung in the closet next to Evan's. Her perfume sat on the dresser, and there on the nightstand was a velvet ring box. With trembling fingers, I opened it. The diamond inside was at least twice the size of my engagement ring. I sank onto the bed, my world spinning. How long had this been going on? How many lies had Evan told? And how could I have been so blind? A key turned in the lock and I froze. Panicked, I ducked into the walk-in closet, leaving the door cracked open. Evan's voice drifted in. "I told you, Brenda. It's all taken care of. Rachel doesn't suspect a thing." "But what about Alice?" Brenda asked. "Are you sure you want joint custody? It might be easier if we had a clean break." My blood ran cold. They were talking about my daughter as if she were a piece of furniture to be divided up. "Of course I want custody," Evan said. "Alice is my ticket to keeping Rachel in line. As long as I have a claim on her, Rachel won't dare fight me on the divorce settlement." I clamped a hand over my mouth to stifle a gasp. How could this be the man I married? The father of my child? "You're so smart, baby," Brenda cooed. "Now, why don't we celebrate? I've been thinking about you all day." I squeezed my eyes shut as I heard them fall onto the bed, their laughter and whispers cutting through me like knives. I don't know how long I stayed there, crouched in that closet, surrounded by the evidence of my husband's betrayal. But as I listened to them plan their future, my future, Alice's future, something inside me hardened. This wasn't just about a failed marriage anymore. This was about protecting my daughter from a man who saw her as nothing more than a bargaining chip. As I crept out of the apartment, my mind was made up. Evan thought he held all the cards. He was about to learn how wrong he was. I would fight with everything I had, and God help anyone who tried to stand in my way. I paced the living room, my nerves frayed to the breaking point. Evan would be here any minute to pick up Alice for their weekend together. My stomach churned at the thought of my daughter spending time in that apartment, with Brenda playing house. The doorbell rang, and I steeled myself. This ends now. Evan stood on the porch, all casual charm in his designer jeans and crisp button-down. "Hey, Rach, is Alice ready?" "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside me. "Now." His smile faltered. "Can't it wait? I promised Alice we'd go to the zoo." "No, it can't wait." I stepped aside, letting him in. "Alice is upstairs. This won't take long." Evan followed me to the kitchen, confusion etched on his face. "What's going on, Rachel? You're acting strange." I whirled on him, slamming the stack of papers I'd gathered on the counter. "Strange? You want to talk about strange, Evan? How about secretly renting a love nest for you and your mistress? How's that for strange?" The color drained from his face. "What are you talking about?" "Don't," I hissed. "Don't you dare lie to me. I know everything. The apartment, the secret bank account, your plans to use our daughter as a bargaining chip in the divorce." Evan's shock morphed into anger. "You followed me? You went through my things? That's a violation of my privacy." I laughed, the sound harsh and bitter. "Your privacy? What about my right to know that my husband is a lying, cheating bastard?" He ran a hand through his hair, his composure cracking. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this. I was going to tell you everything, I swear." "When?" I demanded. "After you and Brenda rode off into the sunset with half of our assets?" Evan's eyes narrowed. "You don't understand. Brenda and we have a connection, a passion, something you and I lost years ago." The casual cruelty of his words stung, but I refused to let him see how much he'd hurt me. "And that justifies throwing away our family? Using our daughter as a pawn in your sick games?" "I love Alice," he protested. "I would never use her." "I heard you, Evan," I spat. "In that apartment, you said Alice was your ticket to keeping me in line. How could you?" For a moment, genuine remorse flashed across his face. Then his jaw set. "Fine. You want the truth? Here it is. I'm not happy, Rachel. I haven't been for years. Brenda makes me feel alive again. And yes, I want a divorce." The words hit me like a physical blow, but I refused to crumble. "You'll get your divorce," I said, my voice ice cold. "But if you think I'm going to roll over and let you take my daughter, you've got another thing coming." Evan's eyes flashed. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise," I replied. "I will fight you with everything I have, and when I'm done, you'll be lucky if you get to see Alice on holidays." He stepped closer, his voice low and dangerous. "You can't keep my daughter from me. I have rights." "Rights?" I laughed. "You gave up your rights when you decided to betray your family. Get out of my house, Evan. My lawyer will be in touch." For a moment, I thought he might argue. Then, without another word, he turned and stormed out. The front door slammed, and I heard his car peel out of the driveway. I sagged against the counter, the adrenaline draining from my body. What had I done? How had we come to this? "Mommy?" Alice's small voice came from the doorway. "Where's Daddy? Are we still going to the zoo?" I turned to my daughter, her innocent face a stark reminder of what was at stake. In that moment, I made a decision. No matter what it took, no matter how ugly things got, I would protect Alice. Evan and Brenda had no idea what they were up against. "Change of plans, sweetie," I said, forcing a smile. "How about you and I have a special day, just the two of us?" As Alice cheered, I began to plan my next move. The war had begun, and I intended to win. I drummed my fingers on the cafe table, checking my watch for the 10th time in as many minutes. The private investigator I'd hired, Jack Malone, was late. Every second felt like an eternity as I imagined what dirt he might have uncovered about Evan and Brenda. Finally, Jack slid into the seat across from me, a thick manila envelope in his hand. "Sorry I'm late, Mrs. Thompson. Traffic was a nightmare." "Did you find anything?" I asked, cutting straight to the chase. He nodded, his expression grim. "Oh, I found plenty. You might want to brace yourself." With trembling hands, I opened the envelope. Photos spilled out. Evan and Brenda at various locations, looking every bit the happy couple. But it was the documents underneath that made my blood run cold. Brenda Wilson, Jack explained, has quite the colorful past. 5 years ago, she was arrested for embezzlement, stole nearly $500,000 from her previous employer. I gasped. How is that possible? Wouldn't that show up on a background check? Jack leaned in, lowering his voice. That's where it gets interesting. The charges were mysteriously dropped and the records sealed. It took some creative methods to uncover this information. My mind raced. How could Evan not know about this? Or did he know and simply not care? There's more, Jack continued. I've been tracking their financial activities. Large sums of money have been moving through that secret account you told me about. It looks like they're planning to leave the country. The world tilted on its axis. What? When? Based on the travel arrangements I uncovered, within the next 2 weeks. My heart pounded. 2 weeks. They were planning to take Alice and disappear. Mrs. Thompson, Jack said, his voice gentle, there's something else you should know. It appears that some of the money being moved, well, it's coming from your joint accounts with Mr. Thompson. The betrayal hit me like a physical blow. Evan wasn't just leaving me. He was stealing from me, from Alice's future. What do I do? I whispered, feeling more lost than ever. Jack slid a business card across the table. This is the contact information for Sarah Chen. She's the best divorce attorney in the state. With this evidence, she can help you secure your assets and full custody of your daughter. I clutched the card like a lifeline. Thank you, Jack. You have no idea what this means to me. As I left the cafe, my phone buzzed with a text from Evan. We need to talk about Alice's custody arrangement. Dinner tonight? Anger surged through me. How dare he act so casual while plotting to steal our daughter away? I typed back, Fine. 7 p.m. Our house. The hours crawled by as I prepared for the confrontation. I hid the evidence in my home office, not wanting to show my hand too soon. At 6:55, the doorbell rang. Evan stood on the porch, a bouquet of flowers in his hand. Peace offering, he said, with a sheepish smile. I wanted to slap that smile off his face. Instead, I led him to the dining room where I'd set out a simple meal. Rachel, Evan began as we sat down, I know things have been tense, but I really think we can work out an arrangement that's best for Alice. I stabbed at my salad, fighting to keep my composure. And what arrangement would that be, Evan? The one where you and Brenda take her out of the country? He froze, fork halfway to his mouth. What are you talking about? Drop the act, I spat. I know everything. The embezzlement, the secret accounts, your plans to leave. Did you really think you'd get away with it? Evan's face hardened. You had me investigated? That's low, Rachel, even for you. Low? I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about low? How about stealing from your own family? Using our daughter as a pawn in your sick games? He stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. You don't understand. Brenda and I, we need a fresh start. Alice would have a better life with us, away from all this drama. I rose to meet him, fury coursing through my veins. If you think I'm going to let you take my daughter, you're delusional. I will fight you with everything I have, Evan. And trust me, I have a lot more ammunition than you think. For a moment, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Then his jaw set. We'll see about that. My lawyer will be in touch. As he stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I sank back into my chair. The battle lines were drawn. I picked up my phone, my hands shaking as I dialed Sarah Chen's number. It was time to go to war. I stood on Mavis's pristine porch, my heart pounding. This was it, my last chance to make Evan's mother see reason before the custody hearing tomorrow. I took a deep breath and rang the doorbell. Mavis answered, her face a mask of cool disdain. Rachel? What an unexpected surprise. We need to talk, I said, pushing past her into the foyer. It's about Evan and Brenda. She sighed, closing the door. I thought we'd been through this. Evan's made his choice, and I support him. I whirled to face her. Even if that choice is a convicted felon. Mavis's eyes widened. What are you talking about? I pulled out the file Jack had given me, spreading the documents on her antique sideboard. Brenda Wilson, arrested for embezzlement 5 years ago, $500,000, Mavis, and now she and Evan are planning to leave the country with my daughter. Mavis's hand flew to her throat. That's impossible. Evan would never. Wake up, I snapped. Your precious son has been lying to all of us. He's stolen money from our joint accounts. He's planning to kidnap Alice. Are you really going to stand by and let this happen? For a moment, I saw doubt flicker in Mavis's eyes. Then her jaw set. These could be fakes. You're clearly desperate, Rachel, making up wild stories to turn me against my son. I laughed bitterly. You think I'd make this up? Call your lawyer. Have them look into it, but do it fast, because the custody hearing is tomorrow, and I'm not letting Evan take my daughter. Mavis's face hardened. Get out of my house. I won't listen to these lies. Fine, I said, gathering the documents. But when this all comes crashing down, remember that I tried to warn you. As I stormed out, my phone buzzed. A text from Sarah Chen. Emergency. Evans filed for immediate custody transfer. Hearing moved up to 5 p.m. today. Get to the courthouse now. Panic surged through me. This couldn't be happening. I raced to my car, dialing Sarah as I peeled out of Mavis's driveway. What's going on? I demanded when she answered. Evan's lawyer is claiming you're unstable, Sarah explained. They're using your confrontation at dinner as evidence. We need to move fast. My mind raced. What about the evidence against Brenda? I'm working on getting it admitted, but it's going to be close. Just get here as soon as you can. I pushed the speed limit, praying I wouldn't get pulled over. As I neared the courthouse, my phone rang again. It was Alice's school. Mrs. Thompson? There's been an incident. A man claiming to be Alice's uncle tried to pick her up. We've called the police, but Alice is very upset. My blood ran cold. I'm on my way. Don't let anyone near her. I screeched into the school parking lot, running inside. Alice flew into my arms, sobbing. Mommy, a scary man tried to take me. I held her tight, my heart pounding. It's okay, baby. You're safe now. The principal approached, looking grave. Mrs. Thompson, the police want to speak with you. I nodded, my mind whirling. How could I be in two places at once? The custody hearing was in less than an hour, but I couldn't leave Alice. As if on cue, Mavis burst through the school doors. Rachel, I got your message. Is Alice all right? I stared at her, confused. My message? She held up her phone. About the attempted kidnapping. Rachel, I'm so sorry. I should have listened to you. Relief washed over me. Mavis, I need your help. Can you stay with Alice while I go to the courthouse? It's urgent. She nodded, determination in her eyes. Go. I'll keep her safe. As I raced back to my car, I felt a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, the tide was turning in my favor. But as I pulled up to the courthouse, I saw Evan and Brenda standing on the steps, looking smug. This was far from over. The real battle was just beginning. I stood in the courthouse hallway, my heart pounding as I waited for the judge's decision. The past few hours had been a whirlwind of accusations, evidence, and testimonies. Evan and his lawyer had painted me as an unstable, vindictive ex-wife. But Sarah Chen had been brilliant, systematically dismantling their arguments and presenting the evidence of Brenda's criminal past and Evan's financial deceit. The courtroom doors opened, and Sarah emerged, her face unreadable. It's time, she said softly. I took a deep breath and followed her inside. Evan and Brenda sat at the opposite table, both looking tense. Mavis sat in the gallery behind them, her face a mask of conflicting emotions. The judge cleared his throat. After careful consideration of all evidence presented, I am ready to deliver my ruling. I gripped the edge of the table, my knuckles turning white. In the matter of custody for Alice Thompson, I hereby grant full custody to Rachel Thompson, with supervised visitation rights for Evan Thompson. Relief washed over me like a tidal wave. I sagged against Sarah, tears streaming down my face. The judge continued, Furthermore, in light of the evidence of financial misconduct, I am freezing all joint assets pending a full investigation. Mr. Thompson, you are also ordered to surrender your passport and are prohibited from leaving the state. Evan's face contorted with rage. He lunged to his feet, pointing at me. This is all your fault. You've ruined everything. Brenda tugged at his arm, hissing, Evan, stop. You're making it worse. But Evan was beyond reason. He shoved past his lawyer, charging towards me. I'll make you pay for this, Rachel. You'll never keep Alice from me. Before he could reach me, 2 court officers intercepted him, restraining him as he continued to shout threats. The judge's gavel came down hard. Mr. Thompson, that's enough! Bailiff, remove him from my courtroom and add contempt of court to the charges. As Evan was dragged away, still yelling, I locked eyes with Brenda. For a moment, I saw fear and uncertainty flicker across her face. Then she turned and fled the courtroom. Mavis approached me slowly, her eyes brimming with tears. Rachel, I am so sorry. I should have listened to you. Can you ever forgive me? I took her hands in mine, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. It's over now, Mavis. What matters is that Alice is safe. Outside the courthouse, I found Alice waiting with my best friend, Jenny. My daughter flew into my arms, and I held her tight, breathing in her sweet, familiar scent. Is it over, Mommy? She asked, her voice small. Can we go home now? I smiled through my tears. Yes, baby, it's over. We're going home. As we walked to the car, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, but for the first time in months, I felt hope for our future. 6 months later, I stood in our new backyard, watching Alice chase butterflies through the flower beds we'd planted together. The sound of laughter drifted from the patio, where Jenny and her husband were setting up for Alice's 6th birthday party. Mavis appeared beside me, carrying a tray of lemonade. I still can't believe how much has changed, she said, shaking her head. I nodded, thinking of Evan, now serving time for financial fraud, and Brenda, who'd fled the country to avoid prosecution. It's been a hard road, I admitted, but we're stronger for it. Mavis squeezed my hand. You're an incredible mother, Rachel. I'm proud to call you family. As Alice ran over, her face alight with joy, I felt a surge of gratitude for the life we'd rebuilt. We'd weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. Come on, Mommy, Alice tugged at my hand. It's time for cake. I laughed, allowing her to pull me towards the gathering of friends and family. This was what mattered: love, laughter, and the unbreakable bond between a mother and her child. As I looked around at the smiling faces, I knew that whatever challenges the future held, we would face them together. We were survivors, Alice and I, and our story was far from over.